evening to the Ride Property community.
Evening.
Traci, Cornelius in the house.
And it's Friday. It is.
It's Friday, and we've also got gin and tonics because it's Friday, and why wouldn't you? So cheers. Hopefully there's a few people joining us with their gin and tonics.
Other beverages are allowed.
Yeah, other beverages are allowed. Right, so I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. So first things first, if you haven't been on StreamYard before, in order for us to allow your face and your beautiful names to come up on the screen like this, for the minute it says Facebook user, but if you just click the link in the comments or in the narrative of the post and just give StreamYard permission, it takes literally a couple of seconds. We'll then see who it is. And it's just a feature that when we're going live, that you just need to do. So without further ado, I just want to, and also apologies that we couldn't go live last night. We had a little bit of an incident. We lost our van keys. And hold on, can anyone just see Cersei starting to make her bed?
It's bedtime.
She's getting tired. So we lost our van keys. It was nothing serious. I think a couple of people thought we were in some form of trouble, which we weren't. We just lost our van keys. We went to go and visit Lenka, the beautiful Lenka, lost our van keys for about 3 hours. So we were stuck in Torquay. And we obviously had our lovely Traci kind of waiting for our interview, and we had to try and reschedule it. But we have this evening. So welcome to Traci. Really, really stoked that you have been able to join us this evening. The wonderful Traci, I'm going to pass over to you in a second to introduce yourself to anyone that doesn't know you. But Traci is incredible. There isn't anything I don't think that this lady hasn't done or isn't currently doing. She puts us all to shame. A podcaster, a speaker, multiple businesses in every single bloody sector you can imagine, all whilst having 5 girls to look after as well, all under the age of...
Well, one's older, she's 22, and then I've got 4 between the ages of 8 and 4.
My God. So Traci, just, if you just want to take a quick 30 seconds, introduce yourself to the Ride Property community.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much. Honestly, I'm so stoked to be here as well. I'm really honoured that you've asked me. And for those of you that haven't met me or that I've not had the joy of meeting yet, my name's Traci Cornelius. Like Lucy says, I've got 5 children. All of them are girls. I do run multiple businesses, and I'm sure that we'll talk a little bit more about that. I got into property last year, and I won't tell you too much of the story yet, and just in case that kind of comes up. I am a speaker. That's probably one of my biggest passions, actually, is to inspire and motivate other people to live life on their terms and realize that no matter what, you've got the capacity to do that. And it doesn't matter if other people have tried rewriting or writing your story to begin with, you can rewrite it to whatever you want afterwards. So that's probably my biggest passion. And businesses probably would definitely be the second. And I think that that's because they give you more control overall, but it does take a certain personality. I mean, you guys must have found that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we can't even compare to what you've done with business. The amount of businesses that you have concurrently as well, like that just blows my mind. Like for us, we've just started out, just really within the first year, and just one business alone is enough.
Yeah, we've now got 2, but that's confusing.
Yeah,
so, no more. Interestingly enough, I think pre-COVID, I've always been a mass advocate for multiple streams of income and multiple avenues for that. And that's because I used to be an expert in the crafting industry. And then in the last recession, so it's ironic that we're in a recession now, but during the last recession, all of my streams of income, whilst they were multiple, they were all in the same industry. So, of course, as people's wages started to dwindle down, as shops started to close, on the news every single day was that people are going to lose their houses, pension schemes won't be a thing because all of the money from the pensions will have gone. It was like doom and gloom all the time. And so, of course, most people, when they need to save money, they stop doing all non-essential things, and hobbies would be one of them. So although I'd had multiple streams of income, they all stopped. Like, it was like being in it's like someone picked me up and put me in some kind of very surreal universe. And so since then, I kind of learned, yes, multiple streams of income, but make sure they're not all in one industry. Because if something happens to that industry, then it's like having just one stream of income anyway. It's just the same. So yeah, so that's why. And pre-COVID, I would have told you that that was a good idea. During COVID, when I've needed to homeschool 4 children and have them with me constantly, I think it's the most stupid idea that anyone could have ever done.
So going back, Traci, to when you were in the JOB and took on your first business venture, tell us a bit more about that. Like how did that come about in the first place? Kind of what spiked your interest? Was it easy? Was it difficult? Go right back to that kind of defining moment.
So the first business that I ran, so interestingly enough, even when I was in a job, I always saw things very differently. It was almost like I'm the person that sits above everything and can look down, and like a jigsaw puzzle, I can see where there's pieces missing and I can see where the pieces don't quite fit. So even when I was in a corporate role, I was the overseer. I was the person that could come and go, I think if we did this with the business, it would probably work more successfully, and that type of thing.
What was your corporate job, Traci?
Many things. So I went from, the worst one I ever did was I was a secretary for a company called Clearwater. And the boss was amazing. The boss's wife, not so much. She literally had a set 2 with me. She was very authoritarian. I'm not so good at taking authority, to be honest. So there was
in the military.
No, I was going to say
no. And see, Mark's in the military. I could honestly tell you that if someone shouted at me, I'd be like, unless you're asking me nicely, I'm not doing it. I'd be a nightmare. Yeah, exactly. Didn't your mum ever teach you manners? Like, there's no need to shout. Yeah, I don't think it would work, would it? But yeah, she had this set 2 in front of everybody. And I've always had a very strong mindset that I believe that however you treat people is the way that you would like to be treated, no matter whether you are 16 years old, 61 years old, or whatever in between. And I remember turning around to her and said, you should be really careful, because one day you may be the boss's wife, but the next day you might be the cleaner. And I think that that's very much how I've tried to make sure that I was. So after that, I kind of thought, well, maybe authority is not such a good thing for me. I'd had quite a lot of personal challenges, shall we say. And by that time, I'd already got Kaisha, and that was the other reason why I fell out with this lady. So she knew that I had a daughter. Kaisha at the time would have been 2. And she said to me, I need you to type up these 3 letters. So I'll call you into my office when I'm ready. So my bus to get home had come and gone. She called me into the office to then turn around and go, oh, actually, that's fine. We'll do it tomorrow. And I was just like, that's just not what you do. You know, it was like this real kind of power trip. So after that, I was like, right, I've got to do something a little bit more.
That was the moment there and then.
Sorry?
That was the moment. That was the light bulb.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You kind of realise that you can do as much as you can possibly do for other people, but they're not always going to appreciate it. And also that there are different personalities within that. But it also affected my daughter. It was like, you can mess with me, but you've messed with her now, indirectly. So I'd moved, got into a new relationship, and my ex-partner was a pilot, so he was away a lot. I tried to find different jobs that would fit in with Kaisha starting nursery. In fact, nursery wasn't too bad. It was when she went to start the nursery part of the school, because that's in school hours. So trying to find something that could fit in within those hours was actually really hard. And I don't think up until that point I'd really thought about working for myself per se. I knew that I wanted something different. I knew that I wanted to be a little bit more in control, but I didn't know what that looked like. And I don't think I really appreciated about self-employed either. So I think I was Googling, probably a different search engine back then. I think I was searching for ways to work in and around school hours. And I think it came up because the first business I went into was a multi-level marketing business. It was a herbal business. And it was so bad. It was so bad. Not necessarily Herbalife in itself, so I don't want to give that a bad name. But the team that I was associated with said that they had like this marketing part. I was so naive, honestly. And they were like, just give us your money and we'll do like the marketing. We'll help you to do that. If I'd have known back then what I know now, I would have known that that was not marketing. So I'm just like throwing all of this kind of money and nothing's happening. So we weren't financially struggling before I took that company. Definitely financially struggling afterwards. And I had this moment that I don't know if it was similar when you guys were younger, but nothing was evolutionary. It was all revolution. It was like, this is not working, so I'll go and do that. There was never like a tiny little change. It was almost like complete opposites. And eventually I went to go and work with this lady in a cleaning company. And pretty much I think I've been working for maybe only about 3 weeks in. And she was like, would you be interested in being a business partner? And I went, no. I just not long had that experience. I was kind of like, no, I'm not into doing that.
She asked you that question?
I think because my brain works differently. So I can't help but go, well, this would be a really good idea. Or if we added this kind of thing, or if we kind of did that bit. So I think it was due to that. And I also think that for her, she'd been running this business by herself with no support. And when I mean no support, I mean like there was no family support. There was no other friends that she knew that were entrepreneurial. And we all know what that's like. That's really hard because you've only ever got your own perspective of how something works. But she was persistent. She kept going. And I remember that other moment, you talk about moments, I was cleaning someone's house because at that point we only did domestic. And I remember turning up and having that moment, when your shoulders go down, because it's like after a while, it's like cleaning your own house. You kind of go back and you're like, same stuff to kind of clear up. And I thought, I'm earning £10 an hour, which back then actually still wasn't really that bad, but £10 an hour, if I was running a company, I could be earning a lot more than that. So I decided to become a director of the company. I then took that company from domestic to domestic and commercial. I got all of Northampton's end of tenancy cleans for all of the end of tenancies for the council places, which was huge. With
that kind of networking and the marketing from that side of things, was that just your own personal research that, how did you make those relationships? How did you get those contracts? What was, how did you know?
I think it was because I went in with a very different perspective. So I went in and I was very young. So when I was younger, I never thought I couldn't do anything. Never even entered my head.
Let's do it.
Why would they say no? But I also thought about it very differently. I was like, right, well, if I was a big company, what would be the things that I'd be the most worried about? I'd be worried that if I was going to be tied into a contract that they do really well, like the first 3 months, and then after that, it would start slacking off. But by that time, you're tied into a 3 to 5 year contract, which is how it used to work on the commercial side of things. So I went in and I went, you don't know me, you don't know our company, because up until now, it's been domestic. But what we will do is we'll give a demonstration as to what we're like, and we won't tie you into a contract to begin with until you can see whether you think that we're trustworthy and whether we do things to your standards. And I think that was just different. I don't think everybody kind of had that approach. But unbeknownst to me at the time, that's where you build up that trust, that know, like, and trust. And there was good communication as well. And I think that was a key factor. So thinking differently, thinking about what problems that they would have. And we also offered all services. So it wasn't just the clean, we also would do the carpet clean. So they could literally have a tenant that would move out, and most of them were not exactly left in the best state, shall we say. But by the time that we'd finished, it was completely suitable for someone else to move in. So we kind of did that. And then Charlotte, my business partner, had a lot of personal issues. She was unfortunately in a very domestically abused relationship, and she literally needed to disappear. So she disappeared for a whole 12 months. She told me she was doing it, but she told me, I can't tell you where I'm going, because nobody could be connected.
Yeah.
But what I'll do is you run it for 12 months, give me this time, and then I'll come back and tell you what we're going to do. So I did. And it was the most lucratively successful business, or one of the most lucratively successful businesses I've ever run. But from a staffing perspective, it was so hard. And I think that partly that was because I was very naive. I mean, I was only, 23, 24 maybe. And I thought everyone had the same work ethic as me. Like, if you say that you're going to do something, you're going to be there. If you say you're going to do a job, you do the job and you go above and beyond. And I quickly discovered that people weren't like that. But when they didn't turn up for work, I thought, oh my gosh, they must have had an accident. You know, the A14 was notorious for like really bad accidents.
So how did you manage that? Because a lot of people do worry about taking on staff members when they're growing their business, you know, in order to scale. But it's a management challenge, isn't it? So having staff. So how did you kind of get over that, and what did you kind of do to sort of, you know, help with that?
Yeah, so I think it really depends what type of business. I think in the cleaning industry in particular, it's kind of notorious for a high turnover of staff. But the vetting process became, like, to begin with, people would turn up, they'd be in tears, I'm going to lose my house, I really need a job. And maybe I'd be like, okay, fine, no problem. I'll clear my schedule. There was two things that I was adamant that I would always do. One of them was the interview process, and the second one was the training. And that's because the next trait that I learned about human beings is that there are quite a few human beings that are nosy. Never entered my head because I'm not naturally that kind of personality. But when I'd been training some members of staff, especially, so I always did domestic first of all because of this reason. We'd go in and most people will have their like paperwork in the kitchen or what have you. And I'd be training these people and I'd see them like move a piece of paper. Just be like, you can't read that. So my criteria from the vetting process to begin with became a lot more thorough. And then throughout the training, they didn't get the job until they passed the training. Because one, they had to have good and high standards. Two, I needed to know they were trustworthy. So I would purposely take them to places where I knew that people would leave things out. And if they looked at anything, they just didn't pass the training. I never told them the reason why they just didn't, because I'm not going to be in a situation where someone would go, oh, no, I won't do it again, because I can't do that.
Probation period where you're just kind of testing them, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was also a growing process for me of realizing that there are different personalities, that there are different reasons for things, that people have different work ethics as well. I did have 2 members of staff. I can't remember to this day how many we had overall. I know that I had 53 was the maximum I had any one time. 2 members of staff that I could rely on heavily all the time. And in fact, one of them I'm still friends with today.
How long ago was that, Tracy, the cleaning business? Because I'm guessing a little while ago.
Find out how old I am. Is that what it's like? That would have been 21 years ago.
So my thought process is, like, obviously now we have, you know, there's so many different platforms within, like, social media, YouTube, like, you know, groups, people sharing things, experiences, you know, people like, you know, mentors that are in your particular industry, being able to funnel their knowledge and experience and, you know, fuck ups basically that people can try and not make the same ones. Apologies, language, but you obviously didn't have that then. So because
we still had the yellow pages then.
So it wasn't really a thing. So where did you draw your, like, inspiration from that point of view? Because I guess, you know, it was a different kind of world back then, like starting from, you know, going from a corporate job suddenly into this world of like entrepreneurism and like creating something brand new. Was there anyone in your life that you were able to kind of draw from, like experiences, or was it just completely natural?
I'm not sure if I'd call it natural, but I would say I naturally look at things very differently. I had a very different childhood, I would say. Probably one of those types of ones that you read about in books. Like I had the very people that you're meant to be able to trust as you grow up were the very people that I couldn't trust at all, like really couldn't trust at all. And so I think I remember looking at a particular person that brought me up when I was 5 thinking, you're wrong and I will never be like you. So I think I was always stubborn. And I think I kind of had that, I suppose, a way of looking outside at something. And it's odd because it's almost like a little bit of a dichotomy, because on one hand, if I had an idea, I never thought I couldn't do it. That thought never entered my head when I was younger. And yet I've constantly always doing this thing of trying to learn more to almost prove to myself that I'm good enough. So I didn't doubt myself, but I have imposter syndrome. So there's like this real weird dichotomy. But at the time, no. But I don't think I was that afraid of failing, because even when I was younger, I don't think failure exists, and I don't think mistakes exist. And I've got a very strong view on that, on how we bring people up, whether they're from children all the way through to adults trying something new. And then when it doesn't work out, we go, oh, you've made a mistake, or you did that wrong, or you failed. It's impossible to. You've never done it before. So actually found out that doesn't work. But that doesn't make it a mistake, and it doesn't make it a failure. I think if you do the same thing in the same way twice, then you could say that that's a mistake. But everything else is just a learning curve. So I didn't have an issue learning. And I didn't have an issue being wrong while learning, because I knew that I would have just found that doesn't work. So what does?
Yeah.
And I don't think I had a problem with time either. I think a lot of us expect success to come so much quicker.
Yeah.
And almost to have got the steps right, first of all. Whereas I'm quite good with going, I don't know how to do this, or well, I'll wing it. I'll work it out as we go along.
More so in today's society, where it's just that kind of instant gratification of kind of
massively.
Wanting success, without the steps and without the challenges, and kind of being in something for the long get rich quick. And it's not prepared to be in something for the long game, or actually, like you said, be prepared to put the effort into to build that knowledge base up and really get to know your kind of strategy or your business, or whatever sector you're going to get yourself into.
I think it's been an interesting time in the respect that when I was younger, there wasn't as much information. To put it into context, when I ended up running my very first proper company that I would call that was my own, when I went to build a website, I had to look up the code to build a website. There wasn't templates or anything, and I knew nothing about coding, but I knew how to research. And I think that was also something that worked to my favor. It didn't worry me about how long it would take to learn to do something, as long as I learned how to do it. And I think that the people doing it now have a different challenge, because yes, you've got all of these tools, but there's so many that you then almost have analysis paralysis, because you think, well, which is the right way to go? And this person says I should concentrate on this, and this person says I should concentrate on that. And I think that it was much easier to be focused when I was younger, because there weren't as many distractions, and there weren't as many people that got the exposure for you to go, oh, they're a guru, I should follow what they say. Unless you went to the library or bought old-fashioned books. You didn't have digital books then. I'm not even sure the dummies for computers or stuff was out then.
So I guess, you had that early business success of 20 odd years ago. How did you then, 20 years on, get to property, and what was the kind of journey through over the last 20 years?
Yeah, so the first thing that I learned was that I didn't want staff. And the catalyst of that was, I remember getting a call. I just picked Kaisha up from school. So she was 3 or 4 at the time. And I'd got this call to say that the cleaners hadn't turned up to do Northampton County Council's building. It's a massive building. And I knew that I'd been ringing around a number of different members of staff, and they were all like, no, or they already had a job that they were doing, and it was in a different place, so they couldn't then get to it. So I had to wait until everyone left the office, and then took Kaisha in, hid her underneath a desk with a colouring book and some pens, which she
had in front of her at that time.
Yeah, if only. So yeah, I mean, she thought it was awesome, but I remember hoovering and just thinking, this is nuts. This is not why I got into running a business. And honestly, to this day, I remember how guilty I felt as a parent and how upset I felt as a parent. And I felt like I'd completely failed at that point. So as much as I think you can't have failure, I think you can feel like you're a failure. And after that, I was like, right, I've got to do something different. And it wasn't that long after that Charlotte came back and went, I'm moving to Spain. So I sold the company instead. And then after that, it was kind of like, now what am I going to do? And it's been really interesting because Nick earned good money, and he was quite traditional, so he never told me that I needed to work. But because of the background that I'd had where I couldn't rely on people, I had this real need internally to not be a burden on someone. And I'm never saying that he made me feel a burden. He didn't. It was my own perception. And I kind of almost wanted to prove that, you don't have to look after us, because Kaisha wasn't his natural child. So there was also that pressure. And I think after that, I went to work, strangely enough, for an estate agent for a little while. It cost us more in childcare. And bearing in mind that Kaisha was at school, so the childcare was picking her up from school when school had finished and then taking her to the nursery for an hour and a half. It cost us more for her to do that than I earned.
Yeah,
which was insane. And that's because at that point they would charge you for a session. And so not for how long that they're there, they charge you for a session. Yeah. And I also, the downside to being quite capable is that a lot of people can put stuff on you very quickly, and you don't feel like you can say no. Because if you're a people pleaser, which I am, and you always want to help, you don't kind of stand up for yourself. And this particular manager, literally, there was no introduction as to what I would do, and she just left the office. So even on my very first day, I've never worked in an estate agency before, even on my first day, I had to manage the whole office. Not only did I have to manage the whole office, I had to call solicitors to find out where the process was for people's for selling their house. I haven't even ever bought a house by this stage. In fact, I still not bought a house, so I still don't know that process. And I very quickly learned that solicitors take forever to do something, and that people's expectation as to how quickly things should move is very different to said solicitors. So I think after about, 4 weeks, I literally, she walked back through the office and I handed her the keys to the office and I went, there you go, I quit. Because I just found it really hard without any formal training. And I thought, I had a real sense of responsibility. And if you're in an estate agency, even back then, you're responsible for someone's house sale. And I didn't know anything. So I quit that. And then I went, right, now I've definitely got to do something. So I looked at all the things that I really enjoyed and that I was good at. And I'd done crafting. That was a hobby of mine for quite a long time. So I thought, well, I wonder if I can make a business out of my hobby. So I started off by making embellishments, and they're things that go onto cards and scrapbooking pages and that type of thing. And I'd make them out of wire. So I used to make words out of wire and all that type of thing. And I started off with an eBay store. So I sold them on eBay. And then when I got to a point where I'd kind of proved the concept, I then decided to open up an online crafting store. And that's when I then got in like the top companies. So we had Die Cuts with a View, and we had like all different stacks of pretty papers and stamps and all this type of thing. And then I thought, right, there's one of me. I have an online store. Nobody knows it's just me, but there's one of me and I've got to fulfill this. So how can I be different to all the other stores? And there was two things that I did that at the time I didn't know would massively set me apart from everybody else, but it is what worked. And the first was that I didn't sell products. I sold the idea of creating a project. So if you're making a project, then you're selling numerous products at the same time, but without selling it. You're not saying buy this. You're saying, hey, I've made this really beautiful thing, and these are the products that I've used to create it. And then of course people would go and put those things into their basket. So in the end, I called it product stacking, because you're technically stacking a number of products. And the second thing that I did that was really different, and this shows my age, is that I would, sorry, I'm gonna
Hello.
this is Soraya. Do you want to come in and say hi just very quickly? Say hi to everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
So Soraya is my 4-year-old. So I wasn't predicting about children. Right, you go down, sweetie. Or were you going to give me a kiss?
Percy.
Shut the door.
We're watching a movie.
Are you watching a movie? Awesome, cool. Right, you go do that then. Could you shut the door on the way out? Is that okay? Thank you, sweetie. Good girl.
Bye.
Can we come downstairs?
Afterwards, yeah, I will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're having popcorn.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm missing out on popcorn.
And
Go. Yeah, go.
Never a dull moment.
This is what I've been doing for the last 5 months. You'd be surprised how many calls. Like, honestly. So yeah, so the next thing that I did that was very different was I sent all of my newsletters via video before YouTube existed. So this was again when you used to have the cameras that were like on a long stick, and they were like a round camera. And I remember being at a trade show. So a trade show is normally when you take all of your products and you sell them basically at a venue instead of it being online. Yeah. And I had my head bent down and I was talking to the customer as I was like trying to get all the change. And suddenly from this side of me, I heard this lady go, oh, "It's you." And I went, "It is me, but who do you think I am?" Because back then I used to get a lot of people that thought I looked like Kate Winslet. So it's like, remember, she's like completely like, why Kate Winslet would be selling at a crafting fair, I have no idea.
When you had to get on the lounger and just like
but no, she said to me, she said, "No, you're the lady that pops up in my inbox." And I realized then the power of doing marketing in a different way to everybody else. And back then it used to cost me a fortune because I had to get streamed to America, and then from America or whatever they would do, they would then stream it to everybody else's inbox. So I think I just, like I said, I did things differently. And then when YouTube started, you can still see the first videos on YouTube in various different businesses. But to begin with, you never saw me. I was never in the camera. You only ever saw my hands, and I used to strap the camera here so that you could do the picture, because I never thought people wanted to see me. It was always about the project. And then as I got more well known, people wanted me to demonstrate. I still think I had this thing in me that had nothing to do with me. It was all about the products and how you could make something pretty. And then I was at the NEC at a trade show for all of the big suppliers. So this would usually happen once a year. And luckily it was another demonstrator that said to me, she said, "Well, if there's nothing special about you, then why is it that those demonstrators," and we had like all these tables, she's like, "Why have they not got a queue?" And I remember looking at that and going,
oh
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How many subscribers on YouTube have you got? Like you got loads.
Yeah, so I think it's just under 7,000.
That's really impressive.
That's for the craft. Is that a channel for crafts then?
Yeah, so it was, but I've not touched it for over 6 years.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So I think the most important thing is that I've never lost them, and I have done things in between. So I ran Mum to 5 Girls when obviously I tended to like pop out children like peas at one point. So at that point it was getting really busy, and I thought, well, what can I do? And obviously if I've got loads of children, then talking about children and pregnancy seemed like a good thing to do. And that was an interesting one. I really enjoyed that, but I also found it it was quite a reflecting time. You know, sometimes when you get caught up in things and you realize that this was very much a focus of almost like the Instagram life, you know, when your children look absolutely perfect and you take the great pictures and you start looking at everyone else and you start going, well, how on earth did they manage to lose weight that quickly after they've just had their baby? And I'm still kind of like this. And why do they look so great when I feel like I've literally drunk 6 bottles of vodka, but I've had like no night out in 2 years? And there was this comparison trap that I fell into. So then I started doing, the typical Instagram picture. And then I would turn the camera and take the picture of all the crap that I just like put off to the side, because I wanted to bring in a little bit of the, yes, you can make things look like this, but the reality is that most of the time it's like this.
Yeah.
And it's normally at least 50 photos of crying, snot, punching, pulling hair before you get the perfect from all of your children, because it just is. So I would then bring the reality to that. And then I just thought, well, do I want to do that forever? And also, do I want to bring my children into that forever? When they're young, they absolutely love it. But I didn't want them to get to the point of, I think it was Nevaeh actually, that turned around and said something negative about her appearance because she looked at another child. And that's when I was like, nah, that's not what I want to do. So yes, there's been so many different businesses and they've tried to fit in, I guess, with what my life has been like at the time. And then it was only more in recent years that I was like, what am I good at? What do I love doing? And that's when I went into business mentoring and coaching, because I'd realized that out of all business, including I did other multi-level marketing businesses after that and had big teams. So the most amount of people I had was 500 people. And when you run multi-level marketing businesses, you have a plethora of different people, different personalities, different skill sets, different levels of experience, different expectations, different dreams. So you as their kind of inspiration, their leader, if you like, the person that's doing all of that. Hey, Laura.
Hey, Laura.
I really learned how to motivate people. And what motivated people? Some people are positively motivated. So let's talk about the dream and how you can get there. Some people are negatively motivated. And it's important to know that. They don't want to lose something. They don't want to lose the time with their children. They don't want to lose the income, even though they don't want to go back to work. But they don't think of it if I get X amount of income, then I've got my own time. It's more the scarcity of like, oh my gosh, if I don't do this, I'm going to be in that. So understanding that about people, and that's what led me into realizing that a lot of the things that I've been doing was business mentoring. And then I was like, God, you get paid for that? You mean I've been paid for that all the time? So I switched to that. So I want to skip forward because there's lots of businesses. So property. Property that was an interesting one. So I came across Progressive, but on the business side of things, not on the property side of things. So I'd done a few of their business courses. I started meeting people that were seemingly to be like really successful in property, and like many people, I was like, but you're not a millionaire.
So did you find the Progressive business stuff because you were looking at property, or did you find that?
No, I found the business stuff because business mentoring and business as a whole didn't know anything about their property side until I was already at Progressive.
Oh, wow. Okay.
At that point in time, like now they're amalgamated, they're like one company, but at the time they were two separate things. So they had property, they had Progressive Success, I think it was called.
Okay. Yeah. And was that led by Rob? Was that Rob Moore?
Yeah, it was mainly because I didn't know anything about Mark. Didn't know anything about Mark Homer at all. It was all on the business side of things. So I came across people that were successful in property. They weren't millionaires, so I was kind of a little bit curious about that. And then I did the Expert Speaker Academy, and I actually did that with Laura. So we were on the same one. And when I had gone through, that was the most transformational week I'd ever had. I honestly, not even just from a speaking perspective, but just from a personal development perspective, I really understood what had been holding me back up until that point. I understood.
Is that?
Sorry?
Is that Tony Gargan that runs?
Yeah, so it was Tony Gargan and Robert Upright that did ours, and they were awesome. But yeah, I think I'd understand the duality of me wanting to inspire and motivate people, but always having this, you shouldn't speak up, you shouldn't say anything. And also, even though I had such a challenging childhood, I was always told, and made to feel you don't talk about it. It was, and everything was always brushed under the carpet. So there was this whole kind of part of like all of this stuff was happening. And that's why I also understand what happens to people in, like, you often, even in domestic abusive situations, you think, well, why don't they leave? It's because you can't, because it's really hard to describe unless you've been involved in it. And so this week was so incredibly transformational, and I was buzzing, like literally buzzing on the way home. And you guys know how far it is. It's like a 5.5 hour journey home. So I'd stopped off at a just like a services and called home to Mark to find out if he was okay and the girls were okay, and saying how excited I was and all that type of stuff. And he tried getting me off the phone. And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, well, that's just like a little bit weird. And then I thought, well, maybe he just wants me to get home, because if I leave Devon, he breaks out in hives. You know, he's like such a local lad. Hardly anywhere. And I got home. I think this must have been about, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night, I think. And I walked through the door, like all kind of buzzing, as you do, you know, when you want to share that. And he looked at me and he went, oh, God, you look so happy. I was like, what? Like, thinking he was just messing around. He's like, no, I'm really sorry. I was like, what is going on with you? And he said, your brother's died. And I honestly remember literally pushing him and going, that's just not funny. And he went, no, he really has. And my brother's 2 years younger than me. And at the time, his children were 3 and 6. So they were the same age as 2 of ours. And my ex-partner also passed away in his sleep. So my brother passed away in his sleep. Later, we found out it's because there was a concoction of painkillers and alcohol. Not on purpose. It was like the accidental kind of part, you know, when it slows your breathing down so much. But it was such a shock. And it really made me think that this is just not like a dress rehearsal. Like, you don't get to rewrite this. Like, this is it. This is the life. And I realized that all the businesses that I've been doing were very much me orientated. If I'm not working like business mentoring and coaching, only I can do the business mentoring and coaching. I can get other people to do the admin work. I can get them to do all the other bits and pieces. But the bit that earns the money, that's still me. And so I thought, well, I'll take a little bit more of a serious look at the property, because yes, it's still you, but you don't have to be the person doing it every single minute to earn the money. And basically we made the conscious decision that we would then get into property. And then since then, it's been a real roller coaster ride of learning. So
that's crazy. It's such an awful story, Tracy. But thanks for sharing. So really, it was almost, you know, what happened with your brother kind of made you look at cash flow and passive income, and the fact that actually maybe you wanted to be, you know, doing other things with your life rather than being that one person that is exchanging time for money, essentially.
Yeah. And also, do you know what it really did? It really made me look at money. And I know that this might sound really bizarre considering I've run businesses before, but you run businesses, you earn money. I'd never really looked at money as a concept, or assets and liabilities as a concept. My brother didn't own his own house. He had debt. Sam's now left with, obviously, the 2 children to bring up. And that's so much pressure on her to now be the breadwinner, to be the parent, to be everything. And I remember looking at that, and I just remember also looking at Mark and our 4 girls thinking, if that was me, I'd be leaving you in a world of crap. Because no disrespect to Mark, but he's not the entrepreneurial one. So, you know, things wouldn't kind of ever change. And I thought, well, we don't own our own house. So what I think you realize how precious life is. But I also looked at money and I was like, well, how do you make more money from money? And what is this about assets versus liabilities, and what kind of assets do you kind of think about? And I knew about the compound effect, as in like your time and effort and all that type of stuff, just never thought about it in the concept of money. And so we really started a whole new education, not just in property, but as a whole, as in how does money really work? And How do we make more of it, but make it work harder for itself? And that's been a really interesting journey. And you also, the more that you learn about it, the more you realize how much everyone tries to keep that, like the state tries to keep that information from you. Not quite like a conspiracy theory, but you know. So yeah, it was very, and that was the catalyst. So, but I can also, this sounds really bizarre, but my brother and I were quite close, especially when we were younger. I can literally imagine that him standing over his body and going, oh fuck, you know. And I was just kind of like, I don't want that to be me. I don't ever want to get to the point of whichever point it is that I pass with thinking, oh, should have done, could have done, should have done. I want to literally go out going, yeah, rocked it.
It's like when you mentioned earlier on about that kind of driving factor of, you know, whether you're driven by kind of money or driven by the not having money. I guess that was that defining point for you.
Massively.
Very much so.
Yeah, and also the realization, I don't know if you find this, but I also think that the older that you get, the more you start to doubt what you can do, not the other way around. When I was younger, there was no doubt. It was like if I had an idea, I just went for it. Whereas now I understand a lot more about consequences.
And invincibility complex wears off, doesn't it, over the years?
Yeah, you realise that, yeah, it does.
Thought in your mind.
And also, there's a number of businesses that I've done that haven't worked out. And I think you become aware of other people going, oh, there she goes again, another business. So I think that part played a little bit of it up until then. And then my brother's passing was kind of like a mass realization that no one else pays my bills. No one else looks after my kids. No one else is responsible for our future. And now actually no one else can change our future. That comes down to me. And so, yeah, after that, it was like, I really couldn't care less what you think. If you don't agree with it, that's all cool. That's like, I'm not going to get you to do it, but this is what I'm doing. And hey, if it doesn't work out, guess what? It doesn't work out. If I don't do anything, if I don't change anything, then I know how this is going to plan out. And I didn't want this.
So I was just going to say, so how did you get educated then? That pivotal point in your life where you talked before about, it should have been evolutionary, but I went around being, revolutionary. It sounded like that was a revolutionary point in your life. And what did you do and how did you go and get yourself educated? What did you use? Who did you go to?
Yeah, so we went to, so the first thing that I did just before the property is that I did a business breakthrough. That was the very first one that I did. And that was a really interesting point because I took Mark with me. And he won't mind me saying because it's true. But I took him with me not because I wanted him to run a business, although I said to him, if you do, I'm completely down with that. I took him because I said to him, I need you to get the fuck out of my way. And it was that strong because at the time, I also was running my own businesses. I've also worked for the States for years. So when the girls were a little bit younger, at 5 o'clock every day, I would then, just before that, I'd make my cup of coffee. I'd come up to the office and I'd be saying good morning to everybody. And then I'd have another whole day's work. And I used to work for Christian Michelson, who's an international coach. So I used to work in his team. And Mark would often be like kind of coming home. We'd like literally be like ships. He'd be walking in the door, I'd be walking upstairs to go into the office. And there were so many times when he'd be kind of like, do you really think this is worth it? And, like that kind of part. And I'd be like, I was on a pathway of thinking that I already wanted life to be different. And I didn't need to be dragged down from that. I needed him to understand that even if he doesn't need to do it, but he needs to stop stopping me from doing it. So I took him to a business breakthrough. And that's when he said to me, yeah, I think I get it. I did a few of the business courses. We then did a few of the property courses. So I think the first
as well, Tracy, was that?
Yeah, so it was with Progressive, and I think it was. So the first one we did was Masopi. So we did the multiple streams of property income, which Mark came to as well, and I loved that because that gave you like such an overview. But just to let you know the difference between our personalities, we got the How to Be Your Own Bank or something like that, the CD set. So we finished the first day, and I'm like this. I'm like buzzing. So I'm like, this is so cool. So to Mark, I was like, should we listen to this in the car? And he looked at me. He was like, are you frigging kidding me? He's like, my head is melting. I can't take in any more information. He's like, how can you? So we did that, and then it was a discussion of like, right, what are we going to do? And we knew that cash flow was going to need to be our thing. I didn't want to do SA because I just know what it's like being let down by members of staff in cleaning. So I've got a slightly biased view to that. So we chose to do HMOs. So I did that, and I did Kevin McDonald's No Money Down. And I think they're both great, really good courses. Mark did the deal packaging one with David Siegler. He didn't have such a good experience with that one for him personally. But once we started trying to do the part of the HMO, we realized that actually the HMO section of what we learned was nothing in comparison to what you really needed to know. So I then got training from Jamie Medill and Stephen Mitchell. So they do the Property Money Machine, which is the rent-to-rent version for HMOs, and they also do HMO Pro. So we did that, sourced our first HMO, and that was actually via a estate agent in Torquay, and that one actually came about slightly differently because originally our area was going to be Exeter. So you know when they tell you to do your gold mine area. Yeah, I knew that there was a lot of HMOs there, went and did the whole thing of getting the HMO register, and they don't give it to you in digital format, so I had to take pictures, transfer that to spreadsheets and all that type of stuff. And then we got a message via the intranet for Torbay Hospital, and it said, we're having difficulty housing our doctors and nurses. Do you know anyone in property?
That's funny. Funny you asked that.
Yeah. So we went, maybe we're looking at this a little bit wrong. Maybe we could like do a HMO in Torquay. And so we found a property, and it wasn't already a HMO. So this was a massive learning experience for us because it needed to have the license, it needed to have all the legislation done, all the doors needed changing, all of these types of wonderful things that you have to do. And it took a really long time, much longer than expected. And then of course COVID happened. So there was quite a few delays, but it's such a beautiful property. And we knew that we wanted our standard to not just be above everybody else's, but to literally be head and shoulders above of everyone else's. So again, this is looking at stuff differently. It's like, where is there a gap in the market? What do people really want? What does the end user want? So if you're going to have a room, well, you want your room to feel like it's a home. You don't want to feel like you're just living in a room. So it was like, right, well, how are we going to create that? And luckily for us in that particular property, we've got really great communal spaces. But then it was like, right, how are we going to decorate it so it makes people feel like they're literally coming home? They're coming home into their front room. They're coming home into their dining room. And we thought about all of those things. We also then thought about, right, what's the other issues that most people would have if they've got a room? And so that's going to be storage. So if you're thinking about storage, great, you need to make sure that you've got enough storage, but most people don't want to see all of the stuff that they've got. So we also make sure that underneath the beds, there's plenty of storage that they can literally just slide things under, and then we've got these like covers that go over the top. So we thought about everything for the end user. So when we've taken people around to view the property, they're all the things that people are like, oh, that's fantastic, really kind of want that. So it's been quite
are beautiful as well. They really are stunning. They really are. You've done such a good job. Such a good job.
Did you finish it just before COVID, or has it been kind of a project through COVID, that one?
Yeah, so we sourced it before. So we actually sourced the property in January. And then it took until June to get the HMO certificate and get that all signed off. And then in fact, it might have been just before that, because it was about 2 weeks before shutdown. And then like, may have delayed signing the thing slightly because we knew that a shutdown was coming. So yeah.
So how did you manage that? Did you actually strike a deal with the landlord that you weren't going to pay during the lockdown, or did you pay some? Or how did
confirmed date at that point in time. They already knew that it was kind of happening, and the landlord's really lovely. He knew it was kind of happening, but there was no confirmed date. So it was just making sure that we could try and strategically delay it slightly to see what would kind of happen. And actually that did work to our favor. If it had been like 4 weeks or something, I don't think we would have been able to do that. And that wouldn't also been fair on the landlord. So yeah, we managed to do that. And then once COVID, or in fact, COVID as a whole hadn't lifted, once they opened the property market again and said that people could move, that's when we started to go, right, okay, we signed everything. And that was in June. And that's when we advertised it and started filling it. And there's been a number of things that I think have been very successful in that, and ones that we would definitely continue to do. And there have been other learning curves.
Go on, give us some examples.
So the next time I would make sure that all schedules of work that are due to be done have actually been done. We then need to do it and make sure that we've then paid for that. Because once the landlord's gone, would the keys now belong to you? It's kind of like, it's up to you. You've got to kind of do that. So there were a number of requirements for the HMO license, and they were just things that needed to be done within a 12-month period. So we then became responsible for doing those. So it's things like that. Next time, I wouldn't be taking it on face value. I'd be making sure that it was all kind of signed off. The most successful thing that I think that we have done within that group is within that property is have the WhatsApp group. That's been completely invaluable. It's just nipped any kind of issues into the bud straight away. It's also meant that the tenants really do feel like they are all connected, and it's not like, oh, well, that's that room and this is this room. And that's really
order that, Tracy, with the WhatsApp group. So as you envisage the scale, do you see yourself being in every single one of those WhatsApp groups?
No, it'll be the property manager.
Yeah.
So at the moment, I'm the property manager.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to do that for maybe the first 3, and then after that, it will be the property manager. And it's interesting because if you're new to HMOs, or if you think this is going to be your strategy, I would still highly recommend that you are the person that does the first ones, because I don't think that there is any course out there that can prepare you for what you actually need to learn, but also the requirements of people, and that relationship that you build up. Like, this is a brand new property. It's only just been kitted out as a HMO. So it was all things that we needed to also think about once people have moved in. So we've got a really good relationship with every single tenant. We went, right, you've been in a little while now. What's your feedback? What do you need? What didn't you need? And a couple of them came back and said, oh, can we get a blind for the bathroom? Because even though it's got all the privacy glass, if they open the window, which I never really thought about because it's got a fan, but if they open the window, so it's like, so it's like, really good point. But then you've got to think, okay, what type of blind? Because if you've got one of those ones that's like a sheet of material, then that can get really moldy. So like then having like the slatted one, but I don't want a plastic one because that can bend easy. You want to think about longevity. So all the things that you never thought that you would obsess over, like blinds, are the things that you start to obsess over. But if you're not the person running the first few, how are you going to know that? You just don't. So yeah, get the experience first of all. And I don't know if you found the same with yours, but it's also then working out how much those things take in terms of time. Because one of the challenges that I've had in any kind of job, because I also have worked for the NHS in between this as a trainer, and also EDF Energy as a trainer, one of the things that I find is that people have very unrealistic timescales as to how long things can get done. And if you're going to go and get a property manager and you've not managed any of the properties and you've not gone through the process, you can end up being one of those people that think, oh well, probably takes, I don't know, what, half an hour to make sure that you've like put somebody into a property and that you've signed all the paperwork, and you find out actually no, it's a lot longer than that. And also
balance, isn't it? Sorry, like with the WhatsApp groups, like we found, it's a balance. I think HMO tenants generally are a lot different to your single let tenants. And I do think, that kind of, when you've got a brand new property and, everything's a bit new and you're kind of ironing out those kind of little creases, that inevitably you will get with new properties and then new households coming together. But I definitely think it's a fine balance between kind of, being as responsive as you can, but also kind of trying to stay within the realms of, manageability of, not everything can always be responded to like that. And I think a lesson that we learned and that I'm definitely learning is that I gave too much of that for too long. And actually now I'm going to step back, and now, we're number 8, rent to rent HMO. It's really difficult. And we've got the most incredible property manager. She's amazing. But still, when those groups start going, and then inevitably if you've got like older houses maybe that you've taken over and there's constantly little bits and pieces going wrong, or maybe not even that kind of, I don't know, important, they're just little moans and gripes that maybe you don't need to be told about at 10 o'clock at night or at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and that kind of stuff that can become quite unmanageable, I think, if you don't get it right at the beginning. And just set that stall out. I don't know, that's just kind of like the experiences that we've had.
I think it's such a valid point, and I think that there needs to be that distinction between, this is like what's kind of office issues, like i.e. things that you report in office time, and then these are kind of emergency things. And of course, obviously our emergency details are everywhere, but that is literally for an emergency.
It's that instant access, isn't it, in a WhatsApp group, that instant access that when a tenant moves in, and even through the whole onboarding process, and we're so kind of, instant gratification now, aren't we, with our WhatsApps and our Messenger and, whatever platform we use, and, people just want to be responded to straight away. And I think when you're onboarding tenants, it's like, smash, and then it's like, that expectation management is just always there to have that instant response. And I think
and I think we're now realizing it's just you've got to have those barriers in, because like Lucy said at the beginning, you're trying to be this great service and really instantaneous to get people in the rooms, and then there needs to be a clear demarcation of how that's going to work going forward. And you're not going to be that instantaneous kind of response at 9 o'clock at night on a Friday, for example. Like
there was something that's not the priority, and no matter how many times you say this is the web form in the description of the WhatsApp group, and to our kind of emergency numbers, and contractors, if there's a maintenance issue that comes up, they've got your number on WhatsApp, they're just getting hold of you.
Always the go-to. I do think, and that is the slight downside, but I don't have an issue not answering because I don't, but then maybe that's that other kind of point that I've got to, because I've done the other kind of businesses that I know that I won't do it. And I've always said to them, if I'm available, I'll answer. If I'm not available, then I won't. Because unless it's an emergency, and if it's an emergency, that's different. And in fact, if it's an emergency, don't use the WhatsApp group. If it's an emergency, call. But I think that's right. And also, the more businesses that you get, it's still WhatsApp, so they're still all individual groups. And that can be a bit of it's a shame that you can't quite link WhatsApp to other apps yet. But I think that will kind of come, or something else would be just as useful. But I do, so far, that's definitely been, I think that's made the transition for everybody gelling together so much easier. And it's also quashed issues that could have festered and grown to be so much bigger than they actually are, because we managed to do that at the beginning. But this is also, I'm really pleased that you brought up the fact that HMOs are really different to buy-to-lets, and this is why, even as the letting and management company, we say that we're specialists in HMOs, because most letting agents really don't know how to fully manage a HMO, even if you've got a fully managed service. And we've been really fortunate that we've had quite a number of calls from investors, from people that are creating their HMOs, just purely because off of the back of the adverts that we've had for ours, because they've gone, well, yours is head and shoulders a higher standard than anything else that we've seen. Will you manage hours when the build is completed? It'll be completed around this time. And they're not on a rent to rent, that's a fully managed service.
Yeah.
So we're quite fortunate that we can have those multiple streams, if you like, from that one avenue, but it will still be specialists in HMOs.
Yeah.
Because that's where we're trying to gain a lot of our experience. And that's also how we knew that we could stand out above our competitors. Because it's a bit more of a niched service.
Is that how you see the future of your business, going into lettings as well as kind of the rent to rent side?
Yeah, so it's really going to be quite an interesting. So obviously the complete turnaround of evictions will have left a number of landlords in a very, very sticky situation. And from my personal view, I just don't think that was very well thought through at literally doing that last minute. Because the interesting part is that, of course, you're going to have rogue landlords and you're going to have some that are just not nice human beings. But the majority of landlords, especially during COVID, have created payment plans with tenants that may have been furloughed or actually lost their job. They've taken the view that people are on universal credit, and so that they've created an extra payment plan for that type of thing. The landlords that have the tenants that just haven't paid, that have caused a lot of damage, are the ones that are suffering. So then delaying this whole process again, I think then creates a lot of issues. And I also think if you buy a house and someone turns around to you and says, well, try not paying your mortgage for 9 months. You know, you're not going to turn around to the mortgage company and go, well, the government have said that you know, we've delayed the eviction process. I'm not getting any rent. I can't do anything with that person. That landlord will then lose the house. That person ends out on the street anyway. So, so from our perspective, there's also a certain amount of risk mitigation that's needed. We're still going to offer rent to rent. We're still going to offer guaranteed rent, because that is, I still see as a viable method right now. But we're also going to mitigate risk by having the letting side of things as well. And that will be the lettings and the management. So there's 3 services that we mainly offer. One of them is a tenant find. So you're literally just advertising and finding the tenant. And then the landlord does the move-in process. Then the second one is fully managed, i.e. most of the time that means that they do the tenant find, then you do the move-in process, and you're then managing that property. And then, of course, we've got the guaranteed rent, which then means that for the landlord, they become pretty much as hands-free as they can possibly be, while still retaining the ownership of that particular property. And yeah, I think that if we've got a good spread between those things, that mitigates a lot of the risk, shall we say. The other thing that we are also doing is property trading or deal sourcing. That's a new area for us. That was always part of the plan, Mark was originally meant to be focusing on that, which is why he did the deal packaging course. He didn't feel as confident after that to get going. And then for him, pre-COVID, COVID, and even now, his job is insane. So he manages the warehouse for Torbay Hospital, which means that he's worked more hours than I think he's ever worked. Weekends, on call 24/7. So throughout the COVID period, not only did I then have 4 children with me all the time, and they came with me everywhere, all the viewings, property setup, everything. But we also saw Mark a lot less. Because he was also at work. So at the time when he would normally come and spend time with the girls, there wasn't that kind of part either. So it's almost like been single parenting completely for a while. And that's not changed for him yet because of all the PPE stuff that's needed.
I was going to say, I won't mention the word PPE, but you just did it.
Blow up on all kinds of things. But yeah, so we've recently started the Jamie York, the cohort one that he's done. So, and we're brand new to that, so I can't give like a full testimonial or anything, but I mean, so far the information on that has been hands down more than everything else we've done combined.
Yeah, brilliant.
So I'm hoping that at the end of that, that will give him the confidence. But also, no matter what you do, you guys know this, you're always sourcing properties. So we also wanted to make sure that we weren't leaving money on the table for properties that we come across that we might not necessarily have the capacity to take on, the cash flow to take on. Maybe it's not even our strategy. Great to be able to package that on to somebody else. And that means that there's a little bonus, I guess, cash flow wise for us, but also to learn those, because our end goal is to have a buy-to-let portfolio. It will be to own some of our HMOs as well. So yeah, we want to broaden that really.
I think we're going to move on, Tracy, because we could talk about property all night with you, but I'm aware of the time. So, and I really, really want to talk to you about your new project.
Yes.
The Limitness Lifestyle Project. Tell us all about that, because it sounds very exciting.
So the Limitless Life Project, this has been an accumulation of a lot of things. So I think anyone that has been listening to this will have known that I've got a very eclectic mix of experiences and things that I've tried. Not sure where you get that idea from, but but one of the things, especially as a business mentor, one of the things that I found was that I was really helping my clients to run successful businesses, to improve their financial situation, to improve the security. But a lot of the times that would take off, and then either their health would suffer or their relationship would suffer. And so I've also done a lot in the spiritual world. And I've also done a lot more on health years ago. I'm not so healthy now, as we can quite easily see. But I'm very kind of aware of my own personal development, my own flaws. I need to feel like I'm connected universally, and not necessarily, I'm not very religious, but I am very spiritual, as in I do believe that we all have energy, and that connection of that energy either fills us up and almost like recharges us, or with certain energies it can drain you, that type of thing. And so whilst I was reflecting on what was happening with a lot of my clients, it's like, there's got to be a better way than this. You know, we often talk about that wheel of life, but the wheel of life to a certain extent still isn't far enough. And then at the beginning of January, because of that, I set a challenge, and it was the can you really have it all challenge. And that was the other reason for doing the rent to rent part on property. So can you go from a zero start, so none of your own money, i.e. what Kevin McDonald teaches, and get into property and bring that up to £6,000 a month within 12 months. And the £6,000 a month is a freedom metric. So there's two things that I would always teach you within business. And that's that you want a freedom metric, which is the money that you need to make sure that all your bills are paid and that you're part of your savings. It's not your lifestyle metric. It just means that you no longer have that moment when that surprise bill comes through and you go, have we got enough to pay for it, or what do we need to compromise on? So that's your freedom metric. And that would be different depending on if you've got children, if you don't have children, mortgage, house, all the rest of it. But your lifestyle metric is then how you want to live your life. And of course, that's drastically different to each person. So just wanted to concentrate on freedom metric, because if you take that concern away from most people, that relieves a lot of stress. So can you do that whilst making sure that you can be at the optimum health for you, whatever that looks like, whether that means that you are a gym bunny, whether that means that you're just eating healthy, maybe that means you're eating clean, like whatever that version is for you. But can you still do that whilst also nurturing the relationship? So i.e. your marital relationship, or your relationship with your children, relationship with your friends, that type of thing. And can you do that whilst also keeping a positive mindset? And obviously during COVID, that's been a very interesting experiment. But then COVID also made me think, why am I doing it for 12 months? Because isn't this the goal?
Yeah.
Everybody kind of wants, you want to live life on your terms. So pans to that, let's do that. So that's how the Limitless Life Project came about. And the Limitless Life Project is a great platform for me personally, because it means I can talk about all of my different businesses. Like if I'm in property, I can't really talk about maybe the business mentoring to a certain extent, but I can't really talk about Amazon business because it doesn't flow. And I might not really talk about my children quite so much, but it's a massive factor, and it's a massive factor for a number of people because they are running their businesses around their children. So I wanted one platform, but I also wanted a platform where I could then interview the people that are living life on their terms, and those that feel that they've got a limitless life, and how they got there and what they did, and how do they maintain that. And then also those that are working their way up to that, and then interviewing different people from those different areas of expertise to then help us to work on the area that we feel that needs the most work. Because I really think that we have a very small amount of time on this earth. It seems like a long time when we're in the day-to-day, but when we look back even to the last year or the last 2 years, you go back and look at photos and you go, oh God, yeah, it didn't seem like that long ago. So I think really we all want to live a limitless life. We all want to live life on our terms, but sometimes we just need a little bit of help of how to do that. So yeah, this is definitely my passion project.
So when is that starting? Can you give us any?
We haven't got a launch date for the podcast yet. The podcast, I've got my intro. That's kind of like
your intro is so sick. It's awesome. You haven't heard Traci's intro. Is it on your page?
Yes, it is. I've got a Traci Cornelius. I hate the term, but it's a Traci Cornelius official page. But yes, it's on that one as well.
So cool. It sounds so professional. It's really, really good.
Well, I think I learned a lot from doing the Women Rock in Business podcast.
Yeah.
And that was really good. But then what I could do is I could take what I learned from there and then make this even better.
Yeah.
So yeah, very excited.
Yeah, awesome. Right, I think we should we jump into the quick fire round?
Yes, I think that it's about that time.
Are you ready?
Night, isn't it?
Are you ready for this?
Let me neck my chin. No, of course I'm ready.
You might
down
have
it. Right, okay. So don't think about it too much. And we'll see if we can want quick answers, please. Ready?
I think so.
Exeter or Plymouth?
Exeter.
Tent or hotel?
Oh, hotel.
HMOs or flats?
HMO.
Cash flow or capital growth?
Cash flow.
Gin or champagne?
Oh.
French Riviera or English Riviera?
I didn't get the first one, sorry.
So the French Riviera or the English Riviera?
English Riviera.
Of course. Do it yourself or outsource?
Oh, outsource.
Brad Pitt or Johnny Depp?
Oh, Johnny Depp.
Or neither.
E-commerce or property?
Oh, both.
A live or a pre-recorded?
Live.
Late nights or lions?
Oh, late night.
Lucy or Steph?
Oh God, no, I can't do that. That's like
yeah. We know it's me, don't worry.
One final question, actually, Traci. Yes. So you can see up here, our hashtag is enjoy the ride, and you know what we're all about is just making sure that rather than thinking about the destination all the time with your head down, that you kind of enjoy the journey along the way. What does enjoy the ride mean to you?
It means that you don't sweat the small stuff, that you understand that there are challenges, but that's the part of growth. And I think too many people get stressed out by that, or they think that if something isn't going right, it means something's going wrong. And I think that goes back to that other part. It's not. It's just part of the process. Yeah. So enjoy the challenges. Do you know what? If I hadn't, as much as I literally might have a life that's a little bit like the series of unfortunate events, I am the person that I am today because I've come through challenges. So I think enjoy the ride is enjoy every step. And also the part which I'm not always quite so good at is I think you have to have fun. I think you've got to find the parts where you can laugh at yourself. And actually there's one more part that we've put to that, because if there's one thing that I've really learned throughout my journey is to be 100% you. And I think when you're growing up, you think that there's an expectation that you should be something else. I'm so pleased that I'm just who I am now. I know I'm not everybody's flavor of ice cream. I'm cool with that. And I think that also helps you to enjoy the ride so much more.
Great answer.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Top answer that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good.
Thank you, Tracy. Right. Lastly, where can people find you on your social media platforms?
Cool. Okay, so I'm very unique in the respects that I have quite a unique name. So Tracy is spelled with an I, and Cornelius is Cornelius. If you type that in, I am like everywhere. But you can find me on LinkedIn, numerous places on Facebook, on Instagram, and you can also find me in this wonderful group. So yeah, and please, if you ever feel like you need anything, I can't always say that I've got all the answers by any stretch of the imagination, but you can always reach out, and especially if you want mindset stuff to help you over any situation, then always reach out.
Oh. And what about PPN Exeter? Is that starting up again soon?
So yeah, so PPN Exeter is Progressive Property Network in Exeter. We hold that at Sandy Park. We are still waiting to see what happens with the government. At the moment, it was that indoor events could take place again from October. So maybe we might be able to relaunch then. In between that, we didn't take the group online because we just didn't think, we hadn't been going long enough to warrant that. So instead, we've just done a few more local things really with local businesses, trying to keep people up to date with anyone in business. We do a coffee catch up every Wednesday. So yeah, you can head over to the Facebook page for the interim period, but I do kind of miss seeing people face to face. And I do think it's been interesting. The great thing about doing everything online for other people that have got networking events is they've attracted people from all over the place. But I'm not sure that the quality of the business that's been exchanged or the amount of business that's been exchanged is the same. So yeah,
Definitely something.
It's a tough one, isn't it? It's a tough one. It's
really hard because I hug everyone, as you guys know. So I'm going to be like, oh no.
I'm sick of these elbow things that we keep having to do.
Whoa.
Right, Tracy, thank you so much for coming on this evening. I'm sorry we had to postpone by 24 hours because I'm in Numpty and can't be trusted with But thank you so much. You've been incredible. You've got so much to share with everybody, and would massively recommend people go and check out all your pages. If this, I don't think there's anything that you don't know about business with everything that you kind of experience and turn your hand to. Thank you very much for coming on.
Best of luck with the HMOs.
I'm
really excited to see how that pans out.
Keep you posted.
And thank you everyone this evening that's kind of jumped on, and we will we'll be seeing you all again next week. Take care, and remember, whatever you do, enjoy the ride. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.